Hello, everyone, and welcome to a quantum-sized episode of Back Lot Banter. It's so small, so tiny, infinitesimal even.
It's already done. Wow, that was the shortest review we've ever done. Holy
Hey,
shit.
thanks for watching, everyone. No, Tucker, we got a lot to talk about today. Well, we got one
Well,
movie in particular to talk
yeah.
about, and that is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the newest and hottest from Marvel Studios, kicking off Phase 5, of course, and,
Yep.
a divisive film, to say the least. A bit of
Yes.
an underwhelming kickoff to Phase 5 for a lot of people, but we'll get into it all in due time. But of course, before we do, I want you to subscribe to Back Lot Banter. This is the first UMP that we're doing on the new channel, by the way,
Great
so
point, yeah.
thanks for joining
Welcome.
us.
Hello.
Like this video, comment your thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp's Quantumania, and you can join our Discord server. That link is in the description. There, you can talk about Marvel movies. You can talk about DC movies, even. You can talk about Oscar movies, you can talk about video games, you can talk about anything that you damn well please. So you just join that, chat to us, we'd love to see you in there. But anyway, Tucker, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Let's get into Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I'm gonna flip it on you here, Tucker, because you always
Okay.
ask me my thoughts first, but I'm gonna ask you your thoughts first.
Yeah, sure. It's usually how conversation goes.
Oh,
Throw it back
okay.
to the other person.
Is it?
Continue the conversation with the other response.
I'm not super good at these.
Even the Wasp Quantumania, you started off saying that it was an underwhelming start to Phase 5, and I think that's pretty true across the board. I think
Yeah.
even the people that enjoyed this movie, and I enjoyed it to a good enough extent. We'll get into it. My thoughts certainly lowered as I've left since a couple days ago we watched the movie, but I don't think anyone would disagree that this is not the greatest way they could have started off a new phase. It has elements that could have or could be going forward really important. It's like, oh, this is why they started off with Phase 5. This is really why the quantum realm and these characters were the perfect choice. But as it stands, it really feels like they had two Ant-Man movies, and they did okay for Ant-Man movies. And let's make a third Ant-Man movie because we like doing them in threes.
Yeah.
And that's about it. It feels like the least creative effort that I've almost ever seen go into a Marvel movie from multiple angles. I think that it drops a lot of what makes the Ant-Man movie special, which I think is my biggest criticism of it. And it also leans so heavily on sci-fi tropes that it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. It doesn't feel very distinct at all.
No.
And it makes it a very low tier Marvel movie for me, even though I did enjoy certain aspects of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. Is in that I thought that
And we're gonna need a bigger boat because everyone's in this boat.
It's true. I thought that it had its brief moments. But as a whole product, it is very undistinct, as you said.
Yeah.
I think the script is really undercooked, really underdone, really just lazy, I would even say, for scripting this thing. Direction leaves a lot to be desired, and again,
what do you expect?
Exactly. Strips a lot of what makes Ant-Man as a character, both, as a person and as a superhero action character, strips a lot of that away to make it just whatever for 2 hours. It's not even insultingly bad, as I think what a lot of people are saying about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's just that it's so nothing is the real issue.
Yeah, and let's talk about losing that Ant-Man identity, because even though I don't love either of the Ant-Man films, they're actually pretty low on my personal Marvel ranking compared to basically everything else.
Yeah.
I think that I still enjoyed them to the extent that I did because they had this unique flavor. And I'm not even talking about Scott Lang necessarily as a character and how they changed him from the other movies to this one, but having the heist theme in the first one, having this more focus on comedy. Ant-Man and the Wasp is one of the more straight comedy movies in the MCU. Lots of things are just played for bits, like Scott getting small and having to put on the hoodie and run through the hallway. Like these are comedy bits, and this movie eschews all of that. It gets rid of the comedic aspect of this Ant-Man supporting cast, which was his little heist group of buddies, including Michael Pena, who is literally not present in this movie at all, which is actually probably the biggest thing you can knock this movie for, because he was the heart and soul of those other movies in terms of their tone style and comedy. He was the best part of those, and not having him or the other guys. I can take T.I. or David Dismalchian, I don't really care that much about them, but
awful, and that's why he's not in those movies anymore.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
But that's a really hard shift into this movie. And story-wise, it kind of makes sense why it makes that shift. But I really think that with how, on the whole, generic, as we'll get into, a lot of the sci-fi concepts of this movie are, you could have put really any hero in this scenario. And I kind of wish that they hadn't done it with Ant-Man, or at least had it turned the comedy up in this movie, because it takes itself so seriously that it loses the sense of fun that the other Ant-Man movies had.
Yeah. I want to get into what we're talking about there is a scripting issue. Is that, you know,
Yeah.
we strip a lot of the comedy out of here, and I do. You know what? Credit where credit is due. I want to sprinkle in some positivity here.
Yeah,
I
of course.
do think that there are funny moments in here. They got to laugh out of me, particularly the interpolation of Hank Pym in this film.
Sure.
Who's Michael Douglas is getting up there in age, and you can kind of tell that in this movie. He's got this grizzled sort of nature about him, and what they really turn him into in this movie is more of a one note crazy old man who just loves ants. Like, probably like 75% of his lines in this movie are like, "Look at what the ants can do. I love ants and science."
Yeah.
And I thought that was funny, personally. But, you know, we really lean heavily on the Ant-Man family, the Ant fam in this.
Yeah.
Janet Van Dyne, Hank, Hope, and then now a new introduction into this film, kind of, Scott's daughter, Cassie.
Yeah.
And their dynamic, they're split up for a majority of this movie, so we get
almost the entire thing, yes.
Exactly. So we get very little of them together. And when they are together, it's just the most vapid nothing. Like, what are the stakes for Scott Lang in this film? He has to rescue his daughter. And that conflict only gets introduced like maybe an hour and a half into the movie. We're a long way. Well, hour and a half might be over exaggerating, but
this movie's not that long, Tanner.
Exactly. We're a long way into this movie before like the stakes of like Kang being here and capturing Scott's daughter are introduced. For a lot of that, we are just split up, kind of just roaming around the quantum realm.
Yeah, just palling around, just seeing the sights.
Exactly. The sites that are unsightly, I would call them.
Sure.
Just this soundstage with a shitty-looking volume screen behind it.
Yeah.
Movie looks really bad, but you know that's no news to anyone, I think.
Well, the interesting thing about the CGI is I think that it actually gets better as the movie goes, because I think some of the worst green screening, the worst CGI is when they first arrive in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
And you're seeing Michael Douglas's hair like superimposed against the crazy nebula background, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. This is bad.
Yeah.
But I do think that as the movie goes on, the CGI of all the Kang's empire and the ants crawling around and buildings crumbling, it's totally serviceable. I don't think it's as bad as some of the CGI we've gotten in other recent Marvel projects, like the car chase in Moon Knight, or like some things in She-Hulk. Like those are like almost unfinished. But I do think it gets better as the movie goes on, and that's why I was like pleasantly surprised that this movie didn't feel that low quality to me in those places. But I also do think that the quantum realm, while it was, I think it's an interesting location to set things, and I think there are definitely a number of moments in this that use it to its fullest potential. I'm like, oh, this is really creative. This is why it's exciting to be in the quantum realm. Other than that, and I think we can shift a little bit, get into the generic sci-fi aspect of this film. It feels like it could be a Star Wars planet or a Star Trek planet, or visiting any other locale in another movie.
Plenty of like sixth-rate Star Wars characters. We have a weird little alien. We have like the people rebelling against the Empire. We have a droid-like thing. You know, it is, and just no characterization for any of these characters.
Absolutely not.
Side characters.
But too much, I would say, because they do try to give them emotional stakes moments when one of them gets their head blown off, or they're like, no, we have to fight back. This is our home, and you don't really get too much of a sense of that because the backstory of the quantum realm and Janet's involvement in it is poorly fleshed out, to say the least. You get a few interesting moments of learning about how Janet and Krylar worked together in the past, or how, I think one of the best moments of the film, how Janet accidentally helped Kang to become the conqueror that he is. That's a great scene on its own, but those are the only elements you get, and so there's so little reason to care about the quantum people in the quantum realm. They are just nothing sci-fi gobbledygook characters.
Are you telling me that there are quantum people in the quantum realm?
That's the worst line of the movie. I will say it.
there's
And
lots
I can't fucking believe they used that exact line for an ad. I got that on
yeah,
YouTube,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
just Cassie saying there are quantum people in the quantum realm. I'm like, that that's a bad line, but
Hmm.
what? Sure, of course there are. Why does that really blow your mind?
Yeah, there's lots of bad lines in this, and I think it is a script issue again, as I was talking about. Good old Jeff Loveness on this first
Yeah,
movie, you know.
what a
So
guy. Good
what
for
a
him.
guy coming back for Kang Dynasty. So
It's
we'll
good for
see.
him, but not good for us, I would
No,
say.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone has made the jokes on Twitter that this guy he's a Rick and Morty writer, and this feels very Rick and Morty. And positively and negatively, I think there are some fun sci-fi things that are present in Rick and Morty and in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania,
Yeah.
but it's
Examples,
very
or
what?
do you want to get into any examples, or?
Oh, do you have any particularly fun sci-fi moments that you caught?
I think the whole thing in the when when Scott's trying to get the core with all the
Oh
other
yeah, yeah.
Ant-Man, and they're piling on top of one another, and you get the visuals of him like falling through a bunch of spaces as versions of himself or Hope are like splitting off. I
Hmm.
think that that is one of the
That's
most
cool.
visually interesting and conceptually interesting aspects of this movie, especially because that idea of creating possibility versions of yourself and having them work together because they all have the one goal of saving Cassie. That
Hmm.
is something that could not be done anywhere else, and makes it feel like, okay, this is what the quantum realm does. It's messing with time, it's messing with your mind, it's creating visual uh, amalgams that you
Hmm.
couldn't do it just like on a planet in space or whatever. And so I do think that that scene is one of the best in the movie.
Yeah, sure. And Tucker, I would agree. I think it is probably one of the best in the movie.
Or I like the big buildings that walk around
Oh,
and
the
they
big
like
living
shoot things. They
buildings.
fight
Yeah,
back. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Or drinking the ooze. Drink the ooze. That's
Yeah.
funny. When we, and I think the edit after that sort of kills the joke for me a little bit because we get the drink the ooze, and Scott just goes, "What?" And then we cut away from that sequence. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
A little bit bad. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's I feel is a weakness of splitting our characters up for
Yes, absolutely.
90% of this movie.
Which also then kneecaps the possibility of them like us feeling like the Ant family is really this cohesive group that I'm
Yep.
excited to see together.
Yep.
They're only together for the first 20, 25
15
minutes
minutes.
of the movie.
I
Oh,
timed
really?
it. Yeah, I timed it. They go into the quantum realm at 15-minute mark.
Okay, and they're pretty much split
Yep.
immediately as that happened. Yeah, which I think is disappointing because even though you're right, it's rather vapid at the beginning. I do think that seeing them together at the beginning had potential, but it was just
Yep.
potential that wasn't realized. I liked seeing them sit
Yeah.
around the dinner table and
Save big
banter about
bucks.
science.
That's a funny moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
making the pizza larger, or everyone complaining about how Scott's always talking about how he saved the world. Oh,
Yep.
really? Did you?
You should
Those
write a book
are
about that.
bits,
Yeah.
and the way that the movie opens with its sort of recap of who Scott is and how he's like approaching life as the guy who saved the world.
Yeah.
That is a context in the MCU that I really love seeing. We got snippets of that in Spider-Man, in Hawkeye, of like how do normal people approach seeing a superhero walking around, like, oh,
Yeah.
this has been impactful. There is merchandise. He's writing a book. People do like seeing him, and like the people at the other table are like, hey, we paid for your meal. And it's like,
Yeah.
you didn't have to do that. Oh, that's so
Uh-huh.
nice. I really like that, but that is completely stripped away by the
Yep.
quantum realm, which makes sense. But I
Yeah.
do think that the movie feels unbalanced in that way, especially because I would have loved seeing them, the Ant family 5-person group, work together across the course of the movie to where
Mhm.
more setup and payoff of what happened at the beginning when they worked together could come around by the end. But instead, we just get quantum people, and there were some quantum people,
Yeah.
and then he's there with Kang, and then the battle.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about Kang, and we can do that next, but I just want to quickly note something that other people have said. Another reason why the quantum realm doesn't work, particularly for Ant-Man as a
Yeah.
character, is that his ability is that he shrinks and grows, and that's interesting to see, placed into a world that we understand the scale of things.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
when you put that in a poorly CGI'd quantum realm,
yeah.
it takes away all the weight and the scale of action sequences.
Yeah.
Like honestly speaking, how many times does he use it? He gets big at the very end, and that's like
Yeah.
the big thing. Is like, oh,
Yeah, a couple times. He saves Cassie 2 or 3 times by
Mhm.
by getting big and like wrapping himself around
Yeah.
her, or like stopping a ship from hitting her. But it isn't until the actual big battle at the end of the movie
Mhm.
when they're both using their growth
Yeah, and
powers.
honestly, I was watching it. I'm like, I can't tell. Like looking at this image on screen, I couldn't tell you if they were big or normal sized right now.
Sure.
Because the characters literally have to say the lines, "You're big, I'm big," and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, I think
Mm.
that just points to the filmmakers recognizing that like you can't fucking tell, honestly.
Yeah, and that's another part of losing the Ant-Man
Yeah.
identity that I understand. I think it was a good idea to take it to the quantum realm. I think the
Okay.
idea of this being set up across the course of these movies, having it being so important, and
Yeah.
Endgame, and actually seeing the place and having it be this whole other micro universe with where Kang has been trapped this whole time. I like all those concepts. I think it's just the choreography of the action
Yeah.
because I think there was possibility of he's still around quote unquote normal sized people and normal sized things. And he could have jumped on a wacky quantum spoon and slung himself somewhere else.
Mhm.
But they avoid doing that
Yeah.
because of the CGI budget. Or I don't
I
know
don't
what it
know.
is, but we don't even really, when he does use his powers to like get small, you don't see him. It's he goes small and then he like punches someone and
Yeah.
it's from far away, or you don't get like the cool shots of him running past other things while he's tiny, or
Mhm.
it isn't until that final battle where he's like stomping on like buildings and stuff. It's like, okay, this is a little more. This is
Yeah.
a little. This is a little more like it.
Yeah.
But they avoid doing the creative. He's small against large things shots. Not only because the quantum realm is weird, but because I don't know. They just
Yeah.
didn't choreographize any of that. Like they could have.
They
He
could
could
have.
have jumped on more people's shoulders and like gone inside a guy's ear or whatever. But they just don't. They don't do that.
No. And I do want to talk about this briefly. And I will say briefly because we don't have to get into it because it's fucking, MCU lore sort of nonsense. But
Okay.
did they change the explanation for how the Ant-Man powers work? Because in the first movie, he's like he can be little and like grab people's ties and like yank them down while he's little. But in this, when he's explaining the powers to Cassie, he's like, "Yeah, you get big. You get big when you punch him." And that's how the powers work. That's how you
No,
fight as Ant-Man.
I don't. He doesn't say that because it's a jump and tap. When you're small, you jump and then you swing. Like
Oh
he was
no,
still
I
small
thought
when
that
he
I
hits
thought
them.
no. He says I think he means tap as in like tap the button to
No,
get
no,
big.
tap as punch. Yeah,
No, because they grow when they get
no, they
when they
don't.
punch.
They're still small when they like hit a guy in the face.
I
Literally, I promise you. Go watch the movie again. I know you're not going to, but
wait, I'm not going to. But anyway, I seem to remember I thought the jump and tap was like you gotta tap the button as you swing and then tap it again to get small again.
no,
Like
no, no. I can prove this, and
oh,
you'll remember this
okay,
moment
okay.
because when Scott says jump and tap, he does it, and then he's like, "Did you see that?" And Cash like, "No, you were small."
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, Tucker, you are correct. Thank you very much. Uh,
My
anyway,
my MCU memory is
yeah,
so impenetrable, Tanner.
yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
one bullshit ass stupid line from this dumb movie has
Great
itself
point.
formed in my brain.
Great point. Great point. Okay, Tucker, let's talk Kang. It's Kang
Let's do
time.
it. It's villain time.
I was hoping for Jonathan Majors to be the highlight of this film for me, to be the saving grace. And for it seems like for a number of people he is. People are saying Jonathan Majors innocent, Jonathan Majors best part. I just don't think so. I think that he suffers from the poor quality of this film just like anybody else does, frankly.
Mm.
Um and Kang as an introduction to Kang because he's not the one after all, what's his name in Loki? The
The
one
one
after
above
all?
all.
The one above all, thank you.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Anyway, he's Kang now, okay?
Yeah,
And we are setting him up. This is us seeing Thanos again for the first time,
basically, yeah.
essentially. He has killed Avengers before because he tells us. We don't see any of
Yeah,
that because why
yeah.
would the number one rule of screenwriting, Tucker, is tell, don't show. You know what I mean?
Yes, thank you, Jeff
Yeah,
Loveness.
thank you, Jeff Loveness. But it is a lot of tell, don't show in this. And
Mm.
when it's
Yeah,
time to show what Kang can do, it is the most boring villain like killing civilians or whatever that we get.
yeah,
He has beams, and when he points them at someone, they blink. They just go. They're just boom,
yeah.
out gone.
Or he's using the force and like stopping people from moving, or he's
Yeah,
making like an invisible woman force field, and they're fine powers, but
yeah,
they're not world conqueringly impressive
intimidating.
powers.
Kang is not intimidating to me, is the main thing.
No.
Like, the moment where I was like, this is the point where they're trying to make Kang intimidating. It's when he is, like, telling Scott, it's like, I need you to go steal this thing for me, otherwise I'll kill your daughter or whatever. Like, Jonathan Majors is kind of bringing it in the line delivery, I would say, but it's the demonstration of that is that he's suspending Cassie in the air, and when he's like really trying to put the iron to Scott, what does he do? Oh my god,
Turns her
he
sideways.
turns her sideways. Oh my god,
I can't believe he can do that.
he means business. It is just so dull.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's a problem of this movie not having like large scale impact that we can really feel.
Yeah.
We don't care about the quantum people.
No.
We don't really care that he's taken over. I think conceptually and presence wise, I think that he is a rather intimidating person. Watching Janet come to the realization that this guy's been lying to her the whole time, and he's like putting on this facade of being a nice guy, and when we see him like ordering people around and talking about how he really needs to change the world, I really do think that Jonathan Majors is the highlight of this movie for me, because his performance and the line delivery, I don't think he has the bad lines that everyone else had.
No,
he's not corny. He's selling these
True.
moments, and again, it's only presence wise. His acting presence, I think, does feel intimidating, and I'm very excited to see what he does as like the ultimate Kang. I believe that the one that we see in this movie is not the one that we're going to see in the Kang Dynasty. But I think that he's very good in this, and I think that the scenes with him in it are usually some of the better scenes. Again, the whole flashback of him and Janet working together, I thought was excellent. I really do think that it would have behooved us to more show don't tell of where did he come from? What was the world that this Kang was like before that? I want to see a little bit of his multiversal travels. I want to see him kill an alternate universe Thor and Ant-Man and feel the weight of that he can take down some of the most powerful heroes that we've seen, because as it stands, he presence wise and like conceptually we know he's like ridiculously powerful, but the movie doesn't show us that. And it doesn't really make too much sense as to why Scott Lang, Hope Van Dyne, who's barely a character in this movie, and Cassie Lang should be able to beat this guy.
Beat him, and that's the thing. That's why I think he really sucks in this movie, is that he gets beat by the fucking Ant Fam. He said he has killed Thor and Avengers.
He's on the same level as Yellow Jacket and Ghost.
Exactly. And who does he get effectively defeated by? MODOK and a bunch of ants. Yeah. Seriously. And then, so what going forward, what are we going to do? Is it going to be a different Kang in each movie?
I guess so. I think there's a possibility that he didn't actually die. Because that's kind of implied as Scott is like walking down the street and having a realization, like, right? Yeah, that's actually, I like that moment. It's pretty good.
But I like that moment, but in theory, but I think it points to the fact that like this movie is largely inconsequential.
Yeah. You're right. Absolutely.
I guess he might be like, surprised this one Kang that you saw wasn't dead. But again, the post-credit scene tells us a very different story, is that now the Kangs are going full force at the Avengers. So they're gonna keep sending more?
Because I would need to like reread like the lines. I'm not probably not gonna see this movie again, but reread the lines of what that is. My understanding was that now that the banished one, who was the Kang the Conqueror, or the other Kangs that we see are like, I don't think those Kangs are going to be the ones that it's not the big Kang. I honestly think that somehow the Kang the Conqueror that we saw in this movie survived, and he's going to be the one that comes back, because he's the crazy one. He's the one that's so evil that the Council of Kangs had to banish him to the quantum realm. It seems like he's set up to be the Kang that ends everything. But we also, and I think this is a problem of utilizing Kang in this movie, we don't see him use time. That's what makes Kang scary, is that he knows what you're going to do. He has seen the past, present, and future. And I maybe he mentions that he's seen the future or something in this movie, but we never see him use time abilities to like really fuck with Ant-Man or anything.
I think there's I'm going to go back to the tell don't show aspect of Kang.
Perfect.
So that's really the
Number one rule of screenwriting.
number one rule of screenwriting, and that's the approach that they really take in this movie. And I think it's I want to talk about Lord Krylar is what I'm going to talk
Perfect.
about. Bill Murray. We
Useless
see him,
fucking character.
Yeah, useless fucking character. We see him in one scene, and what does he do? He's there to basically really sell, like, oh, Kang, he's important. You want to be scared of this guy.
Yeah.
And it's just they play this fucking game where they can't say his name because they think that'll
For like
make
half the movie. Yeah.
because they think that'll make him more intimidating. But what that does to the dialogue is make it all like, oh, you don't want to know about him. He's gonna get ya.
Yeah.
And he knows about them, and they are in danger, and he's gonna get.
That's a great point.
Literally, all of Bill Murray's. It was driving me nuts in the theaters. Like, just use names, please, God.
Yes.
Can Bill Murray not be
Use proper
bothered?
nouns.
Yeah. Can Bill Murray not be bothered to learn the character names? What's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that also Bill Murray being underutilized in this movie is another one of my complaints about it. I don't care that much because whatever. I mean, he was.
Mm-hmm.
I like Bill Murray. I think he's fun as like wacky sci-fi guy number 4076.
Yeah.
But and the context that could have been more interesting of like that he and Janet had a relationship and how does that make Hank feel and how does Janet like lying about her past make everyone else feel? These things are sort of or are not sort of, they're very clearly dropped because we have to focus on the stakes and we have to save Cassie and we have to take down Kang, and we never get a chance to revisit the fact that she lied about her past. There's some offhanded lines about it. Maybe Hope is like, you know what, Mom, I forgive you for lying about this or whatever because we saved the day at the end. But that also points to the majority of the Ant family not being well-rounded characters in this movie. The amount of screen time and development and characterization that we get for each of them is very off balance. I think Scott is obviously the most fleshed out one in this movie. He's fine, but he doesn't feel like the Scott that we've known because the movie takes such a hard shift into drama. It's like it has to be about these stakes, and his daughter's going to die, and he's very serious in a lot of these scenes, which isn't the Ant-Man the spark of fun that we see him being even in like Civil War or Endgame. But then Cassie, I think, is totally fine. She's like fine introduction. She has her moment. She's very passionate about like activism or whatever. She's a good like step forward towards there being a Young Avengers or Champions or something, because that's a pretty consistent element of those books and teams is like the younger generation is focused on activism in a way that the older heroes are not. But Hope is nothing. Hope is nothing in this movie, and Hank is basically nothing, as you said. And Janet is she's fine. She gets a lot of backstory.
Surprising amount of backstory and screen time for Janet.
But it's just Scott and Janet, and everyone else is just I don't know. It's so unbalanced. It's really weird.
And I want to talk about the characterization of Scott and the dynamic that he has with Cassie here. Okay. Because we as you said, Cassie is sort of introduced to us as, you know, she was arrested for protesting in the park and stuff like that. She's like, you know, they're playing on this like Gen Z activism thing. Okay. So, you know, I get it. I understand what we're going for here. And thusly, the arc that Scott has to go on is that he has to learn to like care about like societal change, I guess. He has to
look out for the little guy.
Look out for the little guy. You know, he has to want to save the quantum people.
Yes.
But does that?
I don't want to save the quantum people.
but here's the thing: does that happen in the movie? Because I was watching the third act, I was like, Scott is doing all this because, as far as he knows, Cassie is still up there with Kang. That's why he's trying to get Kang and get up to the tower again.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's
also to get home because the orb or whatever the hell is the only thing that can get him out of the quantum realm, and that seems to be his goal the entire time. Even once he has Cassie and the two of them are like fighting together, it's we need to get to the top of the tower and get the orb working out from Kang so we can get home.
Exactly. And the film is very clear in setting up that is supposed to be Scott's arc, because Cassie has a line while they're like traipsing through the quantum realm, the soundstage that is the quantum realm, that she's like, you need to learn to stop being so selfish or whatever, and, you know, look out for the little guy, like you said. And I just don't think that ever comes across later.
I just don't buy it. Yeah,
I just don't buy it, and I think they kind of forget about it, so we can have a big punch on with Kang.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll be interested to see how that element of Cassie's characterization carries forward into
Hmm.
whatever presumed Young Avengers champions that we get in the future, because I do think that divide between the older and younger generations is what makes them being different so unique.
Hmm.
Is as a fan of the Champions books, watching those kids go out and take on the challenges of activism and social justice that the older heroes don't deal with because they're focused on stopping the guy who can rip the world in half. Is an interesting dichotomy, and I think it's good that it's planted here. I think that is as an interesting element of Cassie's characterization,
Hmm.
because she feels emblematic of this is why the younger generation is distinct. But you're right that it's not really an element of this movie's plot.
No, it's not. And you mentioned going forward, Tucker, and that that is what the MCU is all about. So I'm not going to, like a lot of people online do, a lot of cynical film Twitter people. They're like, "Oh, Marvel movies are all about only setting up the next thing, and that's why they suck." But you and I both understand that that is the strength of a cinematic universe filmmaking. Is
Yeah.
that we do get an inclination of where this universe, where these characters are going to go in the future. At the same time, however, each subsequent MCU film, each film in the past has been a good film on its own, and has
Well,
not been,
for the most part,
for
yes.
the most part, and has not been wholly concerned, seemingly, with only setting up future films and future villains and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
especially
that's the issue with
considering,
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
yeah, the stakes of this movie are literally contained to a world that we cannot see when we are in the normal
Hmm.
large scale MCU, the Untum realm.
Yes.
Um, but and also if you think about it, it's like, okay, so the Kangs are mad now. That's really the only thing that comes out of this. All of our characters are still alive, which is a surprise, by the
Yeah.
way. I'm surprised. I'm surprised
I
that Janet
definitely
didn't
thought.
sacrifice herself, or
Yeah.
Hank didn't die, or I hope I wouldn't really care that much if she died.
I honestly, I thought it would be Hank or Janet was
Yeah,
gonna kick it in this movie, but no.
and so they're fine, and he's still like going around and getting ice cream, and they're having a meal, and nothing in the large scale world has changed.
Yeah.
Modoc's not back.
Nope.
Kang is gone. The quantum people, we'll never see the quantum people again,
Nope.
unless in the Kang dynasty we somehow get a portals scene, and we get the
God,
people from
Tucker,
from Shang-Chi
you
world, and we get the
might.
people from
Yeah.
Quantum Realm world, and
Yeah.
totally
I think
possible.
probably will happen. Yeah.
Which will be whatever.
Whatever.
They'll
Yeah.
be in the background for 30 seconds, and I'll
Hmm.
be like, hey, it's the guy who can read minds.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, the stakes are the status quo change is the lowest that has ever been in the
Yeah.
MCU.
It really changes nothing. And Tucker, thank you for reminding me. Another big element to this film that we didn't talk about. Quick thoughts on MODOK.
Oh, I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to recontextualize a really terrible character from the first movie.
Yeah.
He looks stupid as fuck. Everyone in the theater laughed every time he showed up on
Yeah.
screen, but I think that's the point.
Yeah.
I think that it's just that the CGI wasn't as good as it could have been, but design wise, concept wise, even like some of his lines and stuff, I think he was one of the better parts of this movie. And I don't think he's dead. I think he's gonna come back.
Oh
He
yeah.
died in like such a undramatic
Yeah.
way that like maybe he was just like faking it, or maybe he like passed out because he was bleeding a bunch or whatever. But like
Mhm.
some of the quantum people are like, you know what, we can fix him up because maybe he's not a bad guy after all because he
Mhm.
stopped Kang, and then he'll come back and be like, Scott, it's me, I'm an Avenger now. And honestly, I'm down for that. I
I
think it'd
think.
be very fun for him to be like
Yeah.
the shitty guy in the back who's like, I'm on the team, right? And everyone's like, sure, Modoc. Yeah, you go over there and help clean the coffee maker
Yeah.
because
Of
you're
course,
on the
he
team.
wouldn't be a villain anymore at that point, but
Yeah, but I don't care. I think
yeah.
it'd be fun.
Yeah, I do think one of the funniest lines in the movie is when he looks at Scott as he's dying. He's like, "At least I died an Avenger," and Scott's like, "Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
yeah,
him and Hopper. Yeah,
yeah,
I like that moment. And
yeah,
I do think it'll be paid off. I don't think he's dead. I'm
yeah."
happy about that.
He's gonna come through a portal in Kang Dynasty, so you know.
Yep.
But
Closing thoughts.
anyway, yeah. I mean, as I was trying to wrap it up there, but you reminded me of MODOK of like, what does this mean going forward? I think the Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is the most inconsequential wheel spinny movie, and it's not even an introduction for Kang, really. As we were talking about, it's not clear if that's the Kang that's coming back,
Yeah.
or if it's gonna be a different Kang. Tucker, what would you give Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania out of 10?
I'm gonna give it a 5.2 out of 10. I think it's a totally average movie. I
Yeah.
think it does fine with the sci-fi things it's done, but it just feels generic. But I like Kang enough. I like MODOK enough. I like the idea of it setting up this Kang conflict enough to where I don't think that it's a bad movie. I think it's totally average in everything that it does. There are bad moments, there are good moments, and that's about it. And the reason I'm not like furious about it is because most like comic runs, sometimes some of them are bad, and that's okay. Like if as long as it contributes a little bit to the overall narrative, that's all I need.
Yeah. I'm gonna go lower than you. I'm gonna go a 4.3 out of 10. I think this movie is not good. It's
Yeah,
not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's
no,
pretty clearly not good.
no, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's all she wrote about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We'll be back with the Untitled Marvel Project for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Hopefully, we're out of the funk a little bit.
Isn't Secret Invasion supposed to be before that?
We'll see. We'll see
Who
what
the hell
happens with
knows?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We don't have a release date for that, so. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.